From Davar Ministries, I'm Rabbi Vann, Lantz, and I thank you for joining us this week for a peek in Torah. This is Torah portion number 39, Hukkat, and that means a regulation in English. This reading is Numbers 19:1 through 22:1, and we're going to be focusing on chapter 20, primarily verses 2 through 6. Now, if I was to give this a title, I would entitle it, Do You Want to See the Shekhinah? The Shekinah glory of God. Now, I might get up in your face a little bit here today, but this is important. And as always, if I dance on your toes are in the wrong place. Let's get started. Let's begin by opening our time together with the reading. Starting in chapter 20, Numbers chapter 20, beginning in verse 2. It says, There was no water for the congregation, and they were gathered against Moses and against Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, Oh, that we had died when our brothers died before the Lord. Now, of course, they're talking about Korah and his followers, having just happened here just a few chapters prior. Continuing in verse 4, it says, And why have you brought the assembly of the Lord to this wilderness to die here, we and our animals? And why have you brought us up out of Egypt, to bring us to this evil place, not a place of seed, nor fig, nor vine, nor pomegranate, and there is no water to drink? Okay. From a rational standpoint, we can understand. There's some complaints going on here. There's nothing there to eat. There's nothing there to drink. Okay? Well, it seems reasonable. And when we look at all that's that's necessary, and this is a vast number of people, these do seem like logical complaints. Okay, I am not going to bunk what they are complaining about, but I would like you to take another look at the list in verse 5. They're calling it an evil place, not a place of seed, no figs, no vines, no pomegranates. Notice they're not talking about the necessities of life. They're talking about the finer things of life. I think it sounds like they may be a little soft back there in Egypt. Who knows? But they also say there's no water. So, what's happened here? We have a list of people with a list, and they're moaning and complaining. But notice what they've done. They have brought this list to Moses and Aaron. They didn't pray. They didn't bring it to God. They didn't say, Hey God, we need some water, we need food, we need this, we need that. No, they complained to a man instead of praying to a God. Very interesting. We see this even today in congregations, churches, messianic congregations throughout. My spiritual life is going nowhere. Must be the pastor's fault. Must be the priest's fault. Must be the rabbi's fault. Really? I don't think so. And that's the main crux of what we need to be able to understand here today. Our spiritual life does not depend on others. If you're not getting where you need to be in your spiritual life, you got one person to blame. And you look at them every time you see a mirror. It wasn't up to Moses. It wasn't up to Aaron to provide for the people. That's God's job. Did they ask God for provision? No. They complained to a man. Doesn't get you anywhere. But look what happens in verse 6. I really like this verse. And Moses and Aaron went in from the eyes of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation and fell on their faces. And the Shekhinah, the glory of God, appeared to them. Now, let's quickly identify who them is. It's not the assembly. You want to see the glory of God? It's not up to your pastor. It's not up to your elders. It's not up to your deacons, rabbis, priests, or anybody else. Our spiritual life is under no one else's control other than you. Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's not so good. But guess what? In verse 6, who saw the glory of God? Now, of course, it goes on. Moses is given some instructions, and water is provided for the people. But you know what? Water could have been provided for the people if the people had prayed. But they didn't. They left it up to somebody else. They left their spiritual walk up to another person. You want to see the Shekinah glory of God fall? And you need to be the one on your face. You need to be the one leading the charge between you and God yourself. Don't leave it up to another person. They may not make the right move. They may not be able to hear God for you in one particular situation. I'm not saying that people can't hear God for you. But you know what? God's talking to you. And He wants you to hear Him. God wants you to fall on your face and get before Him. God had revealed Himself during this time of what I've nicknamed the 40-year camping trip that the children of Israel were in. He revealed Himself to them many times, in many ways. He revealed Himself on the mount. They saw Him. They heard His voice as a shofar. It was real. It was tangible. There was something there. And yet they complained to a man. Let Moses handle it, they figure. Out of the millions of people that were camped there that day, complaining to Moses and Aaron, only two people got to see the glory of God. Now, I do want to preface that life is not about seeing the glory of God every day. You're not going to see the glory of God every day. You're not going to hear His audible voice every day. You're not going to see a miracle every day. Unless you're looking for it. It's time as a people. It's time as believers, individually and corporately, that we get on our face before God. This is Rabbi Vann Lantz. Do you want to see the Shekinah